Good afternoon, everyone. I am here with Shifu Edmund Durso, and I am super excited to hear what he has to say. Edmund is a dedicated master of martial arts for 3 decades now. He is a firm believer in harnessing energy that can unlock the finest aspects of human nature. In his journey through the realm of Chinese martial arts, he discovered the profound ability to remain centered and invigorated even in the most demanding situations. Shifu Ed has committed himself to the noble pursuit of imparting this invaluable wisdom to purpose-driven leaders, teaching them the art of attaining energy independence with a wealth of experience and a profound understanding of inner strength. Ed Durso guides individuals towards a path of energy, self-discovery, resilience, and personal empowerment through the world of martial arts. And you are going to be speaking to us about empowered leadership flowing through adversity. So please take it away. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Randy. So, when my son was 7 years old, he and I got caught in a riptide and a thunderstorm off the coast of Ocracoke Island, which is in the Outer Banks off the shore of North Carolina in an area known as the graveyard of the Atlantic. When we started out, we were having fun surfing in the small, soft waves in the shallows. But I got lost in my thoughts about how he was growing up so fast. And so I went out for one more ride. And the time that it took for us to get out there, when we turned around, the island was a sliver on the horizon. When I hung off the board to see how deep the water was, there was no bottom. And as the fear and the panic began to well up in me, I started to freeze. We were alone in the open ocean, in shark-infested waters, in a riptide, in a thunderstorm, and no one knew where we were. And as the fear began to stab into my mind, I froze in panic. And while I was drowning in fear, my son got washed off the board and disappeared under the water. I can still see his toes going underneath. So I kicked off the board and I grabbed him and pulled him back to the board. And as I reset and centered, I saw that my resistance to the situation was dangerous and life-threatening. I saw that the man that I was going into this could not be the man that would get us out. I understood somehow that I needed to adapt to the ocean and evolve through it. The ocean was not going to adapt to me. She wasn't impressed with my decades of martial arts training, nor was she going to relent because I was a dad in the ocean with a 7-year-old son. I had to swim the ocean on the ocean's terms, or we would drown and my wife would never see us again. So the next 90 minutes was an exercise in overriding my urges to resist and asserting my ability to flow through the relentless power of the ocean. So I had to keep adapting to the conditions from center and use my energy to keep flowing. Failure was not an option. You know, in most of life situations, it's always in the back of your head that like there's going to be a bailout or somebody's going to come to help you. But here was a moment where it's just me and my son and just the open ocean. And there was no one that could intervene at that point. So I had to continually flow and adapt to the conditions of the ocean. So the next 90 minutes was a battle between who I was and who I needed to be in order to survive the riptide. You see, I knew what I needed to do in order to be powerful enough to get my son and I out. But the truth is that there were parts of me that were not aligned with what was needed. There's a huge difference between knowing better and doing better in regular circumstances and doing better under pressure. And I realized this when I got my son back on the board and I was looking out at how far we had to go to get back to shore. It looked impossible. The truth is, I would have bet against me. If my son wasn't there, I wouldn't be here. That's how committed I was to my hubris, my fear and my doubt, my blame and my certainties. But he gave me a greater purpose, and the ocean gave me no time to argue. I could either keep the weight and distraction of my hubris and drown, or I can let it go and we might survive. The blessing was the ocean didn't care about my thoughts and feelings. I could let those go and attune myself to the now at hand and focus on setting the conditions for getting us out. But there was a cost. The price was pain, and more directly, my fear of it, and the resultant compulsion to avoid my suffering. The same dynamic that drove my addiction when I was younger was here in the ocean with me, and my son threatening to drown us. I could not let my shortcomings be the destruction of my family. So I fought to keep asserting my focus and energy, to use my adaptability, and to trust my resilience. 3 times I nearly failed entirely. 3 times I was tested. So fear of death or failure was the first, and that was when my son disappeared under the waves. That moment where he was lost to me was one of the scariest moments in my life. So blame was the second. What kind of father was I? How stupid could I be? And seeking to escape the fear, I went into the distraction of blame. And the righteous fury of blame is better than the vulnerability of fear, right? Not to the open ocean, maybe to the sharks. See, I understood in that moment that when you put out a certain signal, it attracts predators. And somebody actually had gotten attacked at that same beach earlier that summer and had to get medevac to Duke Medical in 3 feet of water. So I had to keep resetting back to center. And I realized that blaming myself in that situation was not going to rescue us. It wasn't going to help in any way. So I started resetting. I began resenting my stupidity. And as I did, the situation went immediately from bad to worse. And then we would stop moving forward and get overwhelmed by the waves. And then precious time and energy and momentum were lost. I had to let go of my perpetual need to blame and return my focus to observing the ocean and suffering honestly. See, that's a real part about dealing with life on life's terms, and especially leadership, is that it's not comfortable. It's not for the faint of heart. But the last distraction was the most disturbing. So after an hour and a half of battling myself to set the conditions to get us out, while entertaining my son so he was not afraid, and flowing through the ocean, getting bashed around and knocked back, I finally got a toe in the sand. I was like, thank God, we did it. And I let go of my focus and we got washed out by another wave. And by the time I reset again, the shore was 100 feet away. And I was like, not again. I was exhausted. I was certain I had nothing left. I was ready to give up. It hurts too much. I actually had a thought of like, you know what? I'm too weak after all. F it. The Coast Guard will pick us up somewhere near Hatteras and, I'll just float along. But while I was despairing, my son says to me, Daddy, are we going home soon? I'm cold. And I looked at him and he was blue. His lips were blue and he was shivering and hypothermia was setting in. We were out of time. So then I did exactly what you're not supposed to do in a riptide. I turned and swam as hard as I could against the current right to the beach. It felt like an eternity. My arms and legs were lead and I was beginning to cramp up. I kept refocusing on my energy, relaxing my breath and flowing. And no matter how tired or how much it hurt, I was certain I was not going to make it. or that I was a lousy father. I just kept holding, I would just like bat those things away and keep on the focus. I got to get to the truck. I got to get to the truck. I got to get to the truck. And I held that focus until he was wrapped in a dry towel in the warm truck. So I didn't realize it then, but that became a moment that has shaped my life since. But in some ways, it can be harder to apply this wisdom in your daily life where the necessity of survival seems less immediate and the damage more tolerable. In truth, it's not very different, especially if you're a leader. Leadership contends with setting the conditions for future success while under the pressure of the current conditions. So leading your son through a riptide to the shores of success is very similar to leading yourself or a team through any process that involves change. The greater the perception of risk, the greater the pressure we feel. And the patterns of change and the responses of human nature under pressure are very similar. They're fractal, which means that the one pattern is the small pattern is the medium pattern is the big pattern. And so they apply throughout life. Now, there's where you are and there's where you want to be. And then there's everything that separates you from where you want to be. And this is where the leader comes in to act as a tempered guide to the realities and past the distractions of change. So no matter what the challenge as leaders, we need to be efficient facilitators of focus, energy, adaptability, and resilience. The important thing is to keep resetting yourself back to center so that your energy and your team's energy keeps flowing towards success. As a leader, you set the conditions that you want in the process and you focus on them until the goal manifests. And then it's rinse and repeat until success. It's that simple. But getting it to be that simple, that's what training's for. It requires a shift in how you perceive things. So starting with beginning to see things in terms of flow and stagnation. So every time I was in one of my distractions and resisting the flow of the ocean, I was getting beat by the ocean's adaptability. And every time I opened up and reset back to center and flowed with it, I kind of worked with the ocean. And then every time I got distracted, I was a point of resistance. The ocean was beating me. So I kind of got it beat out of me, a lot of that stuff. And I've been spending the rest of the time seeing, 12 years since, learning how that stuff plays out in day-to-day life. And a couple weeks later, Hurricane Sandy hit New York and our home got destroyed. And so I had to use those same lessons as I'm carrying my family out through the storm surge in the hurricane, and then to safety, and then through the homelessness. And by the way, this all happened. I started my school officially in May of 2012. So this Riptide event happened in September of 2012, and then Hurricane Sandy was October of 2012. And so, and now this is what I've come to realize is that lesson, the change that happened in the Riptide and all the lessons since have really served to refine my ability to help lead people through the adversity as empowered leaders.
You've really had some unbelievable experiences, things that people could never imagine. And you've been resilient, pulling through. And yes, we have those moments of giving up and, maybe I can't get through it, or maybe I'm not strong enough, or, those self-doubting thoughts and moments, but you kept coming right back and pulling through. And that's incredible. I mean, with your son in the water must have been absolutely horrifying. And then losing your house, and, then what? Where do we go? Where does my family go? Another horrifying experience, losing your belongings, losing everything you've built to that point. But being resilient and being able to come back from it. This is the stuff where, you have to empower yourself. You have to find the drive within you, the why within you, and keep pushing towards that goal and not giving up and not letting those negative thoughts take over and saying, no, go away. We're going to replace that with drive and power and motivation to achieve the goal that you need to achieve. And the ones that you had experienced were life-threatening, or, really seriously impacting you and your family. And, so your ambition, your drive, your determination to get back up and succeed and make things happen are just unbelievable. So I'm sorry you had to go through those, but I know in the end they make you stronger. They also show you how much you can endure. Not that you want to have to endure it, but they show you what you're capable of and what kind of leadership and power you have within yourself. So, kudos to you for being able to find that within yourself and have that come to power.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. It was like, there's this thing where at any given moment, you could say that your best thinking brought you where you are. And if you want to get somewhere that's transformative, there's a really good chance that as the saying goes, it got you where you are. It's not going to get you where you want to be. And so what I realized was that for some reason, my belief, my courage, my determination, my drive, my courage, all those things were to be honest, accidental. Like sometimes I was like the bravest man in the world, and sometimes I wasn't. Sometimes I was the most inspired man, sometimes I wasn't. And it for most of my life, it really perplexed me because in any given day, I can go from, this great moment of inspiration of like, you know what, I can do it. And then in the next moment, something happens or there's a shift that I couldn't see. And then no, it's not possible. I was kidding myself, then the doubt and all that stuff. And there was a point where when I was younger, I started journaling as part of like my therapy process. And I could see that there was this very profound shift. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sicker than I thought. Cause like, who am I? I'm the person who's despairing, or I'm the person who's inspiring. And I wondered about that question, and the question about like, how come people are one way in regular circumstances and then another way under pressure? What is that change? And especially with the event of the riptide, but even before that, I was starting to question a lot of the certainties that people had about how people function under pressure. And I one of the reasons why I left the field of human development and counseling as a addiction treatment specialist and went into what I'm doing right now is because I looked around and asked myself, like, all right, so who is amazing under pressure? Who trains in the conditions that everybody else is trying to avoid? And I didn't realize it, but the answer was staring me right in the face all along, and that was inspired martial artists. So I started looking in that direction, like, what are they doing different? And I'm not just talking about like brawlers who are like, yeah, I'm tough. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people who were balanced and healthy. They could flow through calamity, catastrophe, and conflict, but also, had a sense of health and well-being, and even creativity, because that's the flip side of it all, really high energy. And so that's when I realized that, it's the inspired martial artist. Earlier that year, I began training with a grandmaster who has been my Shifu since, and who showed me how, through his direct lineage, like how energy works. And so what I realized is that my ability to function is directly proportional to my energy, my bioenergy. And that's what the Chinese were exploring and discovering thousands of years ago. So, and then there was like a whole truckload of things that I had to unlearn, ways that I used to deal with before I became energy independent, where, if something went bad, I had the right to harm. And if it was too much, that's where the whole blame thing comes in. Who did this? And then I have to go after that or run away from it. And then there's like, oh, this hurts too much. I need to lower the demands and rest more, or I need anesthesia. So if you've ever had a bad day and eaten a pint of ice cream, that's kind of what that's about. You're just comforting yourself in a way that it's not really comfort, because the root of comfort is to fortify, to strengthen, fortis. But what we're doing when we do that kind of stuff is we're anesthetizing, numbing. So, and that has its own because it teaches you that life is too painful or you can't do it, right? So, and then there was the other thing about, wanting to have certainty. I want guaranteed success without any worry or doubt of failure. And you see that in a lot of the programs. And I see people all the time searching for convenient, easy answers, so it's less stress. If you are in the business of any kind of business, if you're in the business of change or leadership, there is no less stress. In fact, there is the quality of uncertainty that's always there. Half the universe is unknown and it's chaos. So we can't know all things at all times, but we have to be able to, what we want to do is to trust our resilience more than the uncertainty. And so believing more in my resilience, believing more in my ability to tolerate the unknown, and also coming to a place where, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't have the right to harm with impunity because I'm having a bad day. Maybe I don't have a right to have a temper tantrum because things didn't go my way. Maybe I don't have the right to avoid people, places, and things that make me uncomfortable. Maybe I have a responsibility to trust my resilience, to accept the pain of the situation, to do it without running or recriminating, and then the fourth thing is to develop my energy health, because all of our highest abilities are directly tied to how much energy we have. When we have low energy, you ever been so tired at the end of the day where you're like, oh, I gotta brush my teeth. You know what I mean? On the way to bed, right? You're exhausted, and like simple things become like these monumental things. And then like there's other times where you're like, I can conquer the world. I'm going to work through everything. I am a natural success, blah, 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 right? And all of that stuff, if you stop and you ask yourself, like, I have questions that make it observable, but in the beginning, it's just like, what's my energy level? And I bet you if your energy level is low, your feeling of confidence is low. And if your energy level is high, your feeling of confidence is high. And then it breaks down even further, where it's like, when the lower we go as human beings, we morph into like vicious slugs, right? Like zombies, like, right? And it gets ugly in relationship. But the higher we go, like when we're really high energy, when we're centered and above, human beings are amazing. They can make beauty out of tragedy. They can stop wars. They can build relationships. They can nurture communities. They can create solutions to problems that are sustainable and life enhancing, you know, but when we're low, it's like quick, easy feat. F this, F you, F everybody. I'm just going to get mine. I don't care what happens tomorrow. Not everybody sucks. You know what I mean? It's like, and so that's like the yin and the yang of human nature. But the thread that connects it all is our energy health. So now the thing about that is, you know, a lot of people talk about stress. The guy who first coined the phrase stress, Hans Selye, this is a direct quote: stress begins to do harm when we run out of what he called adaptation energy. And when we run out of adaptation energy, that's when it starts doing damage to our body. But because science, that was 100 years ago when he said that. He noticed this as an intern in a hospital down in New York City, that no matter whether it was good or bad, people were getting sick in the same way. The kidneys would shut down, their ulcers, the liver, like all their function. He was an endocrinologist, so he studied the like hormonal effects of stress on the body. That's what he spent his life doing. But up until recently, no one could measure this mysterious energy adaptation. You know, they don't know what does he mean by adaptation energy. And like science is like, oh, we can't measure it; it doesn't exist. The Chinese have been training this for 5,000 years. So now recently they're starting to see that there is something called bioenergy, and it's not electromagnetic energy. And then they're starting to develop ways of being able to measure this. And so I find it's much more effective and sustainable to focus on increasing your energy level as a daily practice rather than trying to manage all the demands. Because managing stress is like managing the weather. Good luck with that. You know? So, you know, it just takes a shift in the focus to begin to just see, and it takes a lot of the blame and the angst and the fear. And so, like, when people are looking for the easy solution, really, they're the solution. Learning how to get to your best self, not in any theoretical way that's thought and feelings and all that kind of stuff. Psychology is great up to a point, but it doesn't work when you get hit, you know, for most people. The thoughts and feelings are great, but the ocean did not care about my thoughts and feelings. I had to attune myself to the ocean. So
let me ask you, what are some secrets or tricks that we can do that can take us from stuckness to flow? Like, how can we, in the moment, kind of get ourselves out of that mindset and into a more positive, energetic mindset?
all right, so here's the truth. Like, you have to train it out of the pressure. Practice it. If you go to try to apply it under pressure for the first time, it doesn't work. You're a martial artist, right? So like you've seen a lot of people come in and they're like beginners and they learn 2 moves and like, okay, when do I fight? You want to go have that fight you've been wanting to have? Yeah, yeah. When do I fight? Wait. Why? Well, I know this move and that move. So it's like the dirty secret, right, of martial arts is that, and I had to find this out for myself, is that the more trained you are, the more invulnerable you are to being hit.
Mm-hmm.
That's not entirely true. When even the highest level martial artist gets hit and they get knocked out of center, all their experience and training goes away. And they have to bring it back. There's lots of stories where like highly degreed black belts got just traumatically beaten down because they couldn't reset themselves in the conflict to access their training. And so you train it outside, right? In moments where right, you just look, am I feeling tired? All right, I'm not under attack. I'm not at the workplace or anything like that. And so it's a little bit like qigong. So you just eyes on, relax your breathing. It's small. It's just a trickle charger right now, right? So you just inhale, exhale, inhale, and you time your breath with your movement. So you observe and relax your breathing, and then you flow. Just try to flow it. Now that's like very, very, very tip of the iceberg. But most people who are watching this, they probably have some sort of mental health regimen that leaves them inspired. Lean into that more and look for how the energy works in that. It's an indirect way, like everything that we study and train in our martial arts and what I teach to my students is about basically plugging right into the energy source and taking a direct charge, and then learning how to do that while you're under the pressure. It takes some time. And part of it is like, just like there's no perfect balance, there's no staying centered, there's no staying focused. So rather than focus is good and distraction is bad, observe both, and then you have a choice. Okay, so I'm distracted, let me focus. That's power. I'm out of balance, let me rebalance. That's power. I'm out of center, let me reset the center. That's power. And so just learning to see things in terms of flow and stagnation, and then bringing some level of energy to it, however you understand it, is a great start. Otherwise, it's like grit. I'm going to work hard. You ever notice that, like when you work really hard for a period of time, this happens to people working out, right? They go back to, I got to go back to the gym. They go back to the gym and they bust their ass for like 2 weeks. And then you hear, I got to go back to the gym. I got to go back to the gym. Well, what that is, and this is one of the most profound lessons that I got from my Shifu early on in training. Cause like I trained for a long time where you do thousands of push-ups every day. Right. Right. And you're not done until you're exhausted. Right. If you leave at all not tired, then you're a quitter. So Shifu was training me, right? And I feel good, right? I got energy. I'm flowing with everything. We're doing kung fu, weapons training, right? Wow. And he's like, okay, Eddie, we're done. I'm like, what? I thought he did something wrong. I said, what do you mean? Shifu, I'm not tired. He goes, oh yeah, that's good. I was like, well, I have more I can train. He goes, oh yes, okay, Eddie. American fitness, a little bit crazy. I go, what? He goes, yeah, train to exhaustion. That's not healthy. And then you don't want to go back.
Sure.
And then you think, oh, it's the workout. No, it's the exhaustion. You're not resistant to the workout. You're resistant to the exhaustion. And if you only have one way of training, and that's overtrained to exhaustion, exhaustion is death. You're not avoiding fitness. You're avoiding the sickness that the fitness is inducing. And unless you're like, this works great when you're 16, 17, 18, and you have this natural charge, you fall down a flight of stairs, you don't sleep for 3 days, and you get up and you're like, okay, for the most. But like at 25, and then there's a separation that begins to form. And so learning to be responsible for your energy health is a huge thing. So, here's a trick. I do this with my students. All right, we're going to do push-ups. How long? 5 million minutes, right? And I watch the clock, and at 30 seconds, just when it's starting to land, okay, stop. And they're like, what? Yep, next one. It's called the undertrain. And so this way you quit while you're ahead. So it's kind of like, you follow? Quit while you're ahead. You're better off doing too little every now and then than doing too much all the time. Yeah. And watch, it'll
Good
change
one.
your appetite. What's that?
That's a good one. Because it's
Yeah.
not the typical mindset. You gotta go, 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 go till you can't do one more.
Now
Right?
that has a place, but it's like that's like stuffing yourself. Every time you sit down, you eat everything until you can't breathe or move.
Mhm.
You can't do that all the
Not a
time.
good feeling.
No, it's a terrible feeling, right? And then so you know, again, that's one of those things where stop eating while you're still hungry. And
Right.
that's hard to do, you know. So
Very, yeah.
it is really, especially if it's good and you lose your mind, like, wow, this is great. You're like, oh God, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. I mean, but so
So what would you say are the distractions that we handle wrong?
so I kind of mentioned them before. The way that we one distraction is the right to harm. This is a survival response to energy sickness. So it's like, this is too much for me. I'm gonna attack. This is too much to me. I'm gonna avoid. Neither one of them are productive. One of the key. I don't have a lot of written rules in my school because honestly, if you have, I have three rules that are non-negotiable, and those are uh, no harm, all respect, no exceptions. Because everyone is great until they hit their acceptable exception, and then they change, and that does not help the situation at all. So when you see people like raw, furious, righteous anger, the truth is it hit a point where they can no longer suffer it, and they are in a panic to stop what they think is causing their suffering. And they lose their integrity and decide that they're going to hurt this thing into oblivion. Like every dictator in their rise to power picks a target, a vulnerable part of the population, says, your suffering is because of them. And then because he's talking to people who are already suffering, they go, it offers them out. Yeah, if we get rid of them, we'll be okay. Come on, people. We've been doing this for thousands of years. It hasn't worked yet. So you follow? And then you have like the other end of the spectrum where you have people just tuning out. It doesn't matter. Apathy. Avoid the whole thing entirely, right? It's a distraction. The truth is, here's why it's a distraction. It distracts you from the beauty and power of your natural resilience. So this is one of my speeches that I give. You, all of us, everybody listen here, has a 1000% success rate. They have survived every single pain they have ever encountered, real or imagined, past, present, future. So what are you worried about? If you had 1,000 success rate on any other thing that you did,
Mhm.
could you imagine? All right, yes, I play for the New York Yankees, and I have a 1,000% batting average, no matter who I hit against. Every time you shoot a goal, 1,000 success. Now, why people don't get credit for that is because they don't believe in themselves. They just survive it. Oh, thank God that's over, and I hope nothing bad happens after this. Well, of course something bad is going to happen after this. Yin and yang.
Mhm.
So that's one of the distractions. The next one is, which leads into the next one, is anesthesia. Uh, the wanting for the suffering to end. It's natural. I'm not saying, yeah, go out and find something and be miserable. And I'm not saying that. What I am saying is avoiding pain through anesthesia creates its own, that's what drives every addiction. It creates its own, and it doesn't lead you to a place where you believe in yourself more. In fact, it makes, the more that you get into the addiction, the more you believe in the power of everything else. The pain is too much. The pain is too, no, it's not. You survived everything. It's not too much. But what happens is that our resilience, our ability to bounce back to center, is fed by our adaptability energy. You know, so in Tai Chi, we have like this whole thing where you yield and return, right? Right? You're constantly adapting to change. You stick to it, you connect, you return, right? But if you don't learn that skill set, then what are you going to do every time that compulsion for anesthesia kicks in? Bonbon, more bonbons, please. Do they have bonbons in Canada? The chocolate covered ice cream, right? Yeah. Well, anyway,
They have
ice
that,
cream,
but there's lots of candy.
cookies, candy, right? You know, whatever your go-to anesthesia is, video games, whatever it is. You know, that whatever your thing is, I'm having a bad day, and then you go with fill in the blank. One way to change that is like, I'm having a bad day, or I had a long day, or any of that kind of stuff. Just, I need to train my energy. I need to add more energy. So that's the second. The third one is the unreasonable demand for certainty. I need to know. I need to know now. I need answers right now. It doesn't always work like that. There's a John Keats, I think his name was, an American poet. I think it was, or English. He talked about this stuff called negative capabilities, which he said Shakespeare had in abundance. And that is to be able to sit in the unknown without how did he say it? Without an aggravated reach for answers or something like that. I need to know. You're in the unknown, and it's okay. You're centered while in the unknown. So that's the third thing. Sometimes things don't have an answer. You have to observe for the next piece of the puzzle and then work off of that. And then there's the fourth one is energy sickness. So what that means is that, you know, basically, if you look at the way people normally function, and my not so humble opinion, this human personality is really a reflection of adapting to and dealing with energy sickness. So when people are walking around, why do people act like that? They lack the energy to out-adapt the demand. And when you see it like that, it changes a lot of your, at least for myself, I don't get caught up in the whys. And then I focus on how can I find new ways to help people pass their energy sickness. And that really forms like the foundation of everything that we do. And I think as leaders, leadership is really, for myself, is the process of being in service of helping people with their energy health so that we can all achieve a common goal.
Love it. Love it. So any last words for everybody out there?
Last words. Sounds so ominous. No, I'm just kidding. No, if the perspective that I'm offering or that I work with, when I decided that I was going to develop the energy fitness program from my martial arts training and my life experience and my counseling background, I really made a point of, okay, how do we do it? Okay, that's what got us here. What are we missing? That's what's going to get us there. So in each one of these things, I made a very clear point of not repeating what we've always done. So that if we want, how do I say it? If how we were approaching the world's problems were successful, then we would be asking different questions and faced with different problems. And because we're asking the same questions and facing the same problems, it means that the solutions got us here are not going to get us to where we need to go.
Mhm.
And letting go of that, I know that's not easy. And that was the gift of the ocean, because I had to drop what I thought I knew about everything
Yeah.
and face life on life's terms and adapt to the ocean on the ocean circumstances. And it taught me so much about my nature, human nature, the universe's nature. I'm still unpacking that event. So,
Mhm.
and then the last thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you, Randy. Thank you for your patience, for your support, and your encouragement. And to my students and family as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for a fantastic presentation and for being vulnerable and sharing, your truths and your experiences and how it's led you to where you are today and creating your programs and helping so many people. It's fantastic. I love hearing when people are taking their own life experiences and being able to share that and empower other people with it. So thank you for doing everything that you do and for being here and sharing with us.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
So, well, I look forward to the next time.
Yeah.
And